Well, this is going to be a bit of a long trip, but I think it's going to be worth it. I'm headed to Lafayette, California for a visit with Joan Lee. She wants some help with a patio, and I think I can lend her a hand. Joan and her late husband purchased this beautiful fountain on a trip to Mexico. She'd like to create the perfect setting for it by covering the patio with Mexican-style Saltillo tile. Now, Joan is determined to do this job herself, so I'm going to teach her how on a smaller patio in another part of the yard. Perfect, perfect. If I've ever seen a patio that was ready for Saltillo tile, this is it.
Great, I'm ready for Saltillo tile.
Were you going to do this job yourself?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, I took a class.
You took a class?
Yes.
Where?
At a home improvement center.
You don't need me then.
Oh.
Maybe I'll learn something from you.
Please.
Seriously, there's always more than one way to do a job.
Right, right.
Did they talk to you about cleaning the patio?
No, they didn't.
Okay, we're going to start with that.
Oh.
This is not bad. There's a little bit of dirt on here, though, just to make sure we get a good bond between the mortar and this existing concrete slab. I want to start out by cleaning this. So let's get some stuff and do that first, all right?
Oh, okay.
Over
Fine.
here. Ah, nice, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Is this the right color for you?
Yes.
It's a natural color. These are all individually made. Here's the concrete wash right here. We're going to attach this to your garden hose.
Okay.
And it'll do this job very quickly.
Okay,
So
good.
let's
Great.
go grab a hose. Keep it going side to side. This concrete wash will dissolve any long-standing dirt or algae on the patio. We let it sit for about 10 minutes, then give it a good scrubbing. If there is algae on here, this will just kind of break it up.
I can see it loosening.
Yeah. Finally, we rinse off the patio with water and begin moving our tiles over to the work site. Now, you've done a lot of research. You went to the clinic and everything. What's next?
To figure out how many tiles will go across and what the space will be.
Okay. Well, why do we need to do that?
Because you don't want to end up with a little piece or too much cutting.
I told you don't need me. That's, yeah, right, exactly right. We want to make sure that when we put these down for real, that we don't end up with some little narrow strips on the side.
Right.
Right. So let's just grab a few of these. And you know what? Over here, we have an expansion joint right here. What I'd like to do is to make one of the tile joints fall right on this expansion joint.
Okay.
So let's just see how this would lay out if we started with a full tile right there, and then we went across this way. And we're going to have to leave a ½ inch for our joint. Okay. Okay, last one. I don't believe this. I do not believe this.
Perfect.
This never happens. This is a very good omen. It's coming out perfectly. Next, we lay a row of tile across the width of the patio, leaving approximately a ½ inch between each one. Okay, last one in this direction.
Oh, it doesn't quite fit. It's just about an inch
A little
over.
long?
Yeah.
All right, well, I don't want to tighten up these joints in here because I want them to be consistent ½ inch. So, here's what we can do. It's about an 1.5 inches over down there. We could cut an 1.5 inches off this end tile, or we could split the difference. We could cut half of it, 3/4 of an inch off here, and 3/4 of an inch down here. It's really your call.
Okay, since people enter usually from that side down, I'd rather that look the full tile down there and
So
have
keep the full tile here.
and cut it on this side.
And cut it on this end. I agree. You know, you're never going to really even notice that.
No.
Remember these? High school geometry class? Only I bet you never had one as large as this one. This is a
Absolutely not.
giant right triangle. So Joan, put it right along the edge of the patio there, and I'll do
Okay.
the same here.
Okay.
Good. Now what we just established here is that this is a perfect 90-degree angle right here, and that we have a perfect rectangle. Your patio is a perfect rectangle. Congratulations, by the way. That's important because it means we can start here in this corner and sort of work that way. If it wasn't a perfect rectangle, we'd probably want to start in the middle because our grout lines would get really nutty after a while. They just would look very strange. Our next step is to mix some exterior grade thin set mortar. We could mix this up with water, but to get a stronger and a more pliable bond, we're going to use this. This is an acrylic fortifier in place of the water. And pour this in. To 2 gallons of acrylic, we add 1 bag of mortar, which Joan pours in gradually. I use a mixer attached to a drill to stir the mortar. Once it's mixed, it will need to slake or rest for about 10 minutes before we use it. Now, you know how we're going to put this on?
No.
With our hands.
Oh.
Nah, just kidding you. We're going to put it on with trowels. You know, there's a whole world of trowels out there.
Oh, you're kidding.
Ah, you won't believe it.
I don't.
Well, what do you say we talk trowels? Now, you know, not all trowels are created equal. This one, for example, is used to distribute and smooth stucco and concrete and plaster. While these, with notches in them, are used to apply mortar under tile. Now, you notice the notches are all different sizes. That's because you have to match the trowel to the tiling job you're doing. The general rule here is the smaller the tile, the smaller the notches. The larger and the more irregular the tile, the larger the notches. So when you're about to do a tiling job, be sure you pick the right trowel. That's trowel talk.
Ron, there's a whole world of trowels. I just learned this from you.
Isn't that great?
Yes, and it is. And I don't know what we're going to do with all these trowels.
Right on, sister. I think we'll put some tile down.
Oh, all right.
Ready?
Yes,
Ready to talk tile now?
I'm ready to talk tile.
Okay. We use the straight side of the trowel to distribute the mortar in one small area, taking it right up to the edge. There we go. Down here. Now we take the trowel and we use the notch side. I'm going to turn this up so it's almost perfectly vertical like this. Got a few pine needles in here. And I'm going to sort of rake this across the mortar we just put down. Now you see what we're getting here? We're getting some ridges and some furrows. You see those nice high ridges like right here?
Right.
That's why we want to make sure we hold this up perpendicular, otherwise it would just sort of smash those out. Since Saltillos have an irregular surface, we take an extra step called buttering, which is spreading a thin layer of mortar across the back of each tile. Now we want to be careful not to get mortar on the face of these because they're still unsealed. All right, now we're just going to drop this on here. In this case, we're going to just align it with the edge of the patio like that. This is kind of an important tile because it kind of sets the tone for everything else. Now, we'll take a piece of 2x4 and a rubber mallet. We'll just give this a little tap. That's to sort of set it into the mortar. And as we do that, it kind of squishes those high ridges down and makes uniform contact with the back of the tile. What you don't want is to have some mortar here, none here. You step on that part without the mortar underneath, the tile's not supported, it'll crack. Okay? With the fundamentals of troweling and buttering under her belt, Joan lays her first tile in place. To keep the grout lines at a consistent half-inch width, I insert a couple of plastic spacers between the tiles. So now you've got your 2x4. The whole tiles go down very quickly, but we'll need to cut tiles to fit along the edges. First, we measure the space. That's about 3.5 inches. Now, we need to subtract from that the width of 2 grout lines. Our grout lines are 1/2 inch apiece, that's 1 inch. So we're going to mark this tile here at not 3.5 inches, but instead 2.5 inches to allow for that grout line. This is a tile saw.
Oh, okay.
Awesome, isn't it?
Awesome.
To think that that saw can cut through here. It's actually got a diamond blade on it and a little pump that circulates water over the blade to keep it cool. So shall we cut some tile?
Let's cut some tile.
There's the cut line that
Good.
we drew right there. So all we do is lay it on this moving table. After lining up the blade to the cut line, Joan pushes the tray toward the blade to make her cut. Good, now pull it back this way. And that's the piece that we want.
Oh, that's beautiful.
By golly, you did a pretty
yeah.
good cutting job there. Yeah, straight as an arrow.
All right.
All right, let's put this in. Now, once all our tiles are laid, we have to let the mortar set overnight prior to taking our next step. It's day 2 of my house call in the San Francisco suburb of Lafayette. Yesterday, Joan Lee and I covered her backyard patio with Mexican Saltillo tiles and gave the mortar the night to set. Here's what's going to happen next. We are going to mix up some grout and fill those joints, but before we do that, got to put on what's called a pre-grout sealer. Actually, this is a sealer that can be put on before and after the grout. But the problem is these are very, very porous on the top. If this grout gets smeared on the top of the tile, and it will when we put it on, we'd never get it off if we didn't put the sealer on first. So we're going to start by doing that. Why don't we take our shoes off, because this is still till we get the sealer on here very susceptible to picking up dirt. Okay, look at that. Kind of wore the toe off of my shoe yesterday, just
You sure
being
did.
down there putting those down. We use paintbrushes to apply sealer to the face of each tile. We want to avoid getting it on the edges or between the tiles because that could prevent the grout from adhering later on. This is so important on Saltillo tiles because they are so absorbent. If they're not properly sealed, then boy, the first time you spill something on them, a cup of coffee, a glass of wine, you know, that stain is in there permanently. There we go. Huh?
Looks
You know what
good.
time it is now?
Time to wait for it to dry.
Wait for it to dry. I think I see another coffee break coming on.
Oh, good deal.
We give the sealer time to dry, then I show Joan just how effectively it works. So you see how that's beating up on the surface there?
Oh, yes.
It's just water. That lets us know the sealer is doing its job now, so we can go ahead and start our grouting. So we'll mix the grout up. This looks familiar, huh?
Yes.
Remember all the fun we had with this?
Yes. That thing
Round
is-
2. We mix a bag of exterior grade grout with a gallon of water. This grout is also rated for large joints, as opposed to the small joints of, say, a kitchen countertop.
Oh, God, it's getting black into
Go ahead.
It's really thick. I'm sorry, but oh! I give up.
Okay, a little more water in here.
I think that'll help.
Okay, you ready? There you go, you got it now. With a little more water and a bit of practice, Joan mixes the first batch of grout. And now we're ready to put it to use. And the right tool for this is this one right here. This is called a grout float. It's kind of sponge rubber. This one's got a smooth rubber on the bottom. So you've got one right there.
Okay.
So the first thing you want to do is take your float and kind of force this grout, kind of hold it flat, force it down into that joint between the tiles. You want to push it all the way down to the bottom so you completely fill the joint up. Make sense?
I see, yes.
As you're taking off the excess grout from your tile, tip your float up about 45 degrees or so and go from corner to corner. That'll keep from raking out. See, if you come across a joint like this,
I see.
you can kind of
Oh,
rake
yeah.
rake out what you just put in there.
Right,
Okay.
I see what you mean.
After grouting a section of the patio, we clean off the tiles with a damp sponge, being careful not to wash the grout out of the joints. You can kind of smooth it out, blend it in, and if you come across a little spot like this where there's a little hole, we can just take a little more grout,
Okay.
put it in here. We work our way across the patio, grouting all the joints except for one. Now I put this piece of foam, this is called backer rod, in this joint because I didn't want the grout to go in here. This joint we're going to have to handle a little bit differently than the rest. If you remember, there was an expansion joint in the concrete right underneath here. We set the tile up so that this joint would fall right on top of that. That means the concrete could move on either side of that joint, so we're going to put a flexible material in here instead of the regular caulk. This is it. It's called concrete crack sealer. It's going to be the same color, and it's self-leveling, so we're just going to put it in up to the top of the joint, and it will eventually flatten itself out, and we won't have to touch it. Well,
I love it.
yeah,
I love it. Absolutely. It looks wonderful.
you can live with this, huh?
Oh, absolutely.
You remember before it was just like a dark slab of concrete?
Look dirty, drab, look.
Who'd
Yeah.
want to sit out here, you know,
No.
the way it used to look?
No.
Now, I agree with you. It's light, it's bright, it's cheery, and it makes me want to sip a margarita.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Now remember, this patio was just a practice run because Joan wanted to tile the patio near her Mexican fountain by herself. And that's exactly what she did. I was thrilled when she sent me these photos of her handiwork. Congratulations, Joan. You've made me proud.